We get a lot of questions related to belt construction. For Dominion, there's essentially 5 types, everything from a single ply up through a water buffalo double ply. And people want to know, what do the differences in construction mean in terms of how the belt is going to perform for me? So we're going to briefly go over the construction of each one of these and then compare them in several different ways. I'll first say that any belt that I would consider a quality belt is going to be made up of something called veg tan leather for the structural leather components. There are belts that are cheaper. They're made of something called split leather, which is a lower part of the hide. It's less structural. It tends to wear out over time, and it's just not something that we want to see in a quality weightlifting belt. So starting with our simplest belt, this is a single ply, and just like it sounds, it's a single piece of what I just said, veg tan leather. These are going to be the thinnest belts, about 6 to 7 millimeter, but this is what I believe to be the minimum standard for a belt. This belt will not stretch. It's a structural piece of leather. That's the single ply. You'll see a lot of belts like this that have suede on both sides. And people say, well, is that a single ply or a double ply? What this belt is essentially this belt with a layer of suede on the top and bottom. So this belt is a single ply with suede on both sides. What a lot of people call the double suede belt. This is kind of the classic look for a weightlifting belt. It's thicker than the single ply. These will be a 10 millimeter belt. A lot of people like the suede for several reasons. One, having suede on the inside is much grippier to clothing. So if you're ever worried about your belt moving around on you when you're setting up for your lift or something like that, the suede on the inside can be a nice thing to have. Suede on the outside is mostly aesthetic. It doesn't add to the stiffness or support of the belt. But one thing it does do is it stays looking like this generally longer than this does. Veg tan leather is going to age and patina over time, whereas suede is not. You can generally kind of keep this clean and keep it looking more or less the same as it does when you first get it. Some people like one over the other. It's really just a preference thing. But in terms of belt support, these two belts are going to be very similar. Moving up from there, we've got something that we call a double ply. It's called a double ply because I said this was a single layer of veg tan leather. This is 2 layers of veg tan leather. Now they're both thinned so that the total thickness of this belt ends up being 10 millimeter, whereas if you put 2 of these together, it would be too thick. But that's why it's called a double ply. Now, double plies come in 2 flavors essentially. One is where the entire thickness is veg tan leather, and the other, like on our Dominion style, is where we've got 2 layers of veg tan leather, but we've also got a layer of suede on the inside. And we do that for basically the reason I mentioned before, that it's grippier to clothing. One other aspect of it is because it's got the layer of suede, we have to thin this middle layer a little bit to accommodate that layer of suede. So the total thickness of veg tan leather on this belt is slightly less than this belt. So in terms of stiffness, that will make a slight difference. In terms of support, it'll make a small difference, but if you wanted to say which one is more supportive, you would have to say the one that does not have suede is going to be a little bit more supportive. Another common type of double ply that we make is a water buffalo double ply. So this has on the outside a layer of water buffalo. The middle layer, again, is standard veg tan, and then we have suede on the inside. Now these are very similar to our Dominion style belts that have suede on the inside. Water buffalo is a little bit stiffer than standard veg tan leather. So in terms of support, these belts are essentially going to be the same. In terms of stiffness, the water buffalo belt is usually going to be a little bit stiffer than the Dominion style belt. So to kind of wrap up, if I were going to group these in terms of amount of support, I would put the 2 single ply belts over here. I would have my 2 double plies with suede on the inside right here, and my double ply with no suede, I would say, has the maximum support. In terms of thickness, the single ply is 6 to 7 millimeter, and all these other belts that I have here are 10 millimeter. That's the standard. We have the ability to make them up to 11 millimeter. People sometimes ask, why don't you make a 13 millimeter? We actually made a video covering that exact subject. The short answer is I don't think it's necessary. For example, if you took this belt and put another layer of suede on the outside, it would be 13 millimeters thick, but that wouldn't have increased anything in terms of performance of the belt. It just would have increased the thickness. That's all it would have done. And for that reason, that primary reason, that's why we don't do a 13 millimeter. If you ask me, how do these belts line up in terms of stiffness? So the single ply is going to be the most flexible. The double suede belt is going to be very similar to the single ply because it's the same piece of structural leather. When you glue the suede on and stitch it, it adds a little bit, not much, but it's a little bit marginally more stiff than the single ply. Next up, you're going to have a Dominion style double ply that has suede on the inside. Next would be the Water Buffalo double ply with suede on the inside. And the stiffest belt would be a double ply that is full thickness veg tan leather. So those are the main types of belt construction and how they compare in some different ways. Essentially, it's going to come down to a lot of personal preference and what you really need the belt to do. If you just need the minimum standard, a single ply is absolutely fine. If you want something that's going to be slightly stiffer, slightly more supportive, the double ply options might be better for you. So if somebody were to ask me, for instance, hey, I'm more of a beginner to this, which belts are the most user-friendly? I would point you to these three right here, the single ply, the double suede, and the Dominion style double ply that has suede on the inside. And the reason is because they're all a little bit more flexible, they're just easier to use. If you said, I don't care about any of that, I want maximum support, then I'm going to point you towards probably a double ply that doesn't have any suede, or something like a Water Buffalo double ply where the Water Buffalo is a little bit stiffer. Another question people ask is, what about belt maintenance? Which belts are the easiest to maintain? To answer that, I would say these two belts right here are the easiest to maintain, for the simple fact that you never have to do anything to these belts if you don't want to. The suede belt, the oil content of this piece of leather is effectively sealed in by the suede. Of course, you can clean the suede if you want to, but it's not a requirement. You never have to do anything to this belt. It's essentially maintenance free. The same holds true for the Water Buffalo, interestingly. Even though the Water Buffalo is veg tan leather, it's finished in a way that seals in its oil content. So you never have to add oil to this belt. It's got suede on the inside, so we don't have to do anything there. We can clean it if we want to, but it's not a requirement. So these two belts, the double suede and the Water Buffalo, are the lowest maintenance belts. That's not to say these guys are high maintenance. I've got plenty of these belts that I've had in the shop for years, and I've never done anything to them. So you may never have to do anything to one of these belts, but because you have the exposed veg tan, if you're in a place, say, that is a very dry climate where the leather wants to dry out, you might once every year or every 2 years or something like that want to add a light coat of neat's foot oil to one of these belts. There are ways you can clean them also, but as far as maintenance, I would say these are zero maintenance and these are minimal maintenance. Hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please like and subscribe. If you have any additional questions, drop those in the comments. We'll answer those. If you want to check out any of our belts, dominionstrengthtraining.com. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.